international group to save the wild Mustangs and burros, and it's called the International Society of Mustangs and Burros. Let's get back to Lacy-J-Dalton's sidekick, Shannon Wendell.
Well, thank you so much, Eddie. Well, you know, normally we're here to have a good time and talk about cool stuff. And unfortunately today we're going to have to talk about something that's really breaking all of us up. That is the, I don't know if anybody's heard, there are approximately, allegedly, 400 or so horses out in Fallon, Nevada, livestock auction area, that are going to go up for sale this Saturday, August 17th. They have, we're not even sure where they came from, but apparently they were taken from tribal lands here in Nevada. There are lawsuits flying. There were more horses that were supposed to have been rounded up from and with the help of your taxpayer dollars through the U.S. Forest Service. Lawsuits have halted that roundup for the time being. They got their butts in a sling, they got caught. This is just absolutely ridiculous to think the allegations out there right now are that wild horses off of your American public lands, whether they're U.S. Forest Service property or Bureau of Land Management property areas, it's your land. And they have only been tasked with managing, and they're doing a really bad job.
You know, Karen, I'm going to jump in. I want you to expound on what you just heard Shannon Wendell say, but I was impressed with some of the information that I was reading that you put out last night when it comes to, and I guess my question is, why are the wild horses, you know, being picked on when I read about, and correct my numbers, 6 million livestock, 4 million, you know, if you will, wild creatures, and only around 30,000 wild horses, but yet they're catching the brunt of everything. Did I get that close enough for government work, Karen?
Eddie, you're right on. And when the law passed in 1971 and the first census came about in 1974, when the law strictly said that the horses were fast disappearing from the American scene, we actually had 60,000 wild horses and burros at that time when they did the first census. Since that time, now, almost 47 years later, we have half that number, and they're still telling us that there's too many wild horses. And I would say, if you would put those numbers up in a first-grade room, and you would put 6 million with all the zeros accurate of livestock on public lands, and you would put 4 million wildlife, and then you would come down to the few little zeros of possibly 30,000 wild horses and burros left, even a first grader would understand that they're not impacting the western rangeland. It's common sense.
You know, Karen, I'm sure that you are familiar with...
You know, Karen, I tell you what, Lacy is now going to respond to you, if you don't mind. Okay, go ahead, Lacy.
Hi, Karen. It occurs to me that if the public really is interested, there is a very, very powerful documentary made by Willie Nelson, Cheryl Crow, Daryl Hannah, Michael Blake, Viggo Mortensen, a lot of very vocal horse advocates made a documentary called Wild Horses and Renegades. And you can see it on YouTube, and I believe you can get copies of it. I got copies of it to hand out to everybody on the documentary channel. I think it's like a Wild Horse 101. And you know, we've known for years that we have a friend named Craig Downer, who's a wild horse and equine expert, and on the Vanishing Species Committee for the World, who has written a book called The Wild Horse Conspiracy, and he tells you about it. And Karen, our thrust always here at Hidden Valley, at Renegade Radio, at Letem Run Foundation is toward a sustainable solution for these horses. Large hay-growing eco-sanctuaries that include a public element, and I know that ISPMB is looking to do the same thing, where people can go and interact with these wild horses in a non-invasive way, and where the horses can actually have their own places and be protected. That's what we're always pushing, and I probably am one of the few advocates who thinks that the public lands for horses, at least if they're not completely for the wild horses and other wildlife, that you know, the horses are in danger. They're getting shot, they're getting hit by cars. They need their own places. That's my personal opinion.
Well, you know, Lacey, I want Karen to expound on what you just said, but that's why I'm so honored to be with you of the Let 'em Run Foundation, to be with Shannon Wendell and Cindy Hartzell of the Hidden Valley Wild Horse Protection Fund. All those wild horses out at the Wainema Ranch Wild Horse Sanctuary now. Just imagine, if you will, now, there's only approximately 600 to 700 acres that they're on right now, but we do abut BLM land, so let's fence off 2,000 to 3,000 acres, and let's get some more of those wild horses so that they can have, and let them run, that's my opinion, have their own territory with water, with grazing, and let them run, because those eco sanctuaries are so important. Like, for example, we're going to have to start farming again to make sure there's enough hay so that every month, month after month, Shannon Wendell, Cindy Hartzell, and every member of Hidden Valley's not having to dip in their hip for hay money. Hey, hey, hey.
Hey, absolutely, Eddie, that's absolutely right. Lacey is spot on there. Our wild horses and burros, and I need to remember, we've got to include those furry little friends of ours, wild horses and burros. That, the Free Roaming Wild Horses and Burros Act of 1971 was enacted at the will and the behest of the American people. People wrote in to Congress, and with their support, their push, everybody was in favor of this. So for some reason, we got an act to protect them. Why are they not being protected everywhere? There's money here. We can create eco-sanctuaries like you're talking about, Lacey. Have the American public come out, have the world come and see our American wild horses. There's money there to be made so that we can help pay for their cost. It's a better alternative than stockpiling them in prisons, in these facilities. They keep ripping them off the range. And here we go out at Fallon, we've got hundreds of horses headed there. How's anybody going to rescue 400 horses?
You better believe it. Karen, your take on all of this.
Well, I think they're absolutely right, because ecotourism is the way of the future. I believe that's the only way we're really going to be able to save all of our horses, and that comes from a lot of public education, having millions of visitors come by. We are still hoping that we can get a tourism center up here where 2 million people come to see Mount Rushmore. And it's the only way I think that we're going to ultimately protect these horses, because, you know, since the law passed in 1971, we have 303 areas for horses, down to possibly down to 174, and they still have 4 more that they're going to zero out and eliminate. So this Bureau of Land Management has never been friendly to wild horses. They're the same agency that back in the 30s and 40s, they were called the grazing agencies. They used to put a bounty up to kill the wild horses and get them off the rangeland. And yet these are the people that are managing our horses now. I think that pretty well sums up as to why this has been such a battle for such a long period of time to be able to protect the horses. I just wanted people to know that these horses are different than domestic horses. Very different. Our domestic horses, all of their abilities that the wild horses have retained. And a lot of that is living together in social families. And if people came out here, you can walk amongst all of these wild horses. They feel so safe that many of our tourists that come, they just come and they can stand there. You do have to be careful during breeding season because the scents are very active. And but one thing that I found is that they're so very respectful of people, so very respectful, and they respond so well to people. And if they're not chased, if they're not harassed. And the thing that we have found that is critical, I think, and critical to the management of wild horses, the more the BLM goes in to disrupt these families, the higher the fertility rates are going to go, which means not so much fertility, but the number of horses, the growth rate of the herd is going to grow. And the reason being is because they're destroying the family structures of these horses every 2 to 3 years. It's a crime. It's absolutely a crime when you see how these horses live together. You see so many of the same traits that humans have. They have affection for each other, and they have cooperation for each other. They share. There's so many wonderful attributes of these wild horses, and we're destroying that every day that the BLM goes in to remove those horses. One last point. The National Academy of Science just came out with a study. What they have indicated is that the BLM must stop removing horses because they're contributing to the increase in their numbers by doing that. We believe that we have the reason why those numbers are increasing after studying some herds that have had no intervention for decades of time and having a herd that had been nearly wiped out every so many years. They went in to try to wipe out the horses. And
Karen,
think that
I think your point is so well taken, and right now, we have this overflow of horses here. We have 450 or so horses coming up for a sale at Fallon. And we know that all these horses, we know what's going to happen to these horses. They're going to go to slaughter. They're going to be inflicted with the captive bull, which is the way we kill cattle. It doesn't work for horses. They regain consciousness in 30 seconds and are fully aware they're being butchered. These things are so wrong. They are such an affront to Almighty God that I personally am reaching out to, and on all our behalf, to try to get people aware of this nightmare that's happening all the time in our country. And I think Shannon has the best solution of all, and I would like her to talk about that next. And Karen, if there's some way that we can all do this together, if we can get all the groups together to sign a petition toward Shannon's idea, which she's going to reveal to us, I think we're going to have a better chance of getting it done. Can you please enlighten us, Shannon?
Well, I've done a lot of thinking, a lot of hard thinking over these last couple of days. What are we going to do? And it all boils back to what is being done right now, I feel, is so wrong. I'm going to ask for support for a congressional investigation into the alleged illegal activity perpetrated by our U.S. Forest Service, the Bureau of Land Management, and who knows who else is involved in the removal of between 700 and 1,000 horses in the state of Nevada. Where do you come up with all of these horses all of a sudden? The story behind that, or we're thinking what might be happening, is that there are horses on free land, U.S. Forest Service land, Bureau of Land Management land, are being pushed onto tribal lands. And once they're on tribal lands, the tribal councils can do whatever they want with them. And they see it as a win-win for them. They're just taking them down to Fallon and selling them. And there's nobody out there buying them except the kill buyers. And from what I understand, these horses, the 400, 450 that are there right now, they're going to be sold in lots. And you know what that means? They're just going to be crammed into horrid conditions, way more than should be put into a livestock truck, and they're going to be trucked internationally. I want to hear from people. Do you agree? Would you like to see a congressional investigation into these acts that I allege are illegal?
Well,
we need to stop.
Well, thank you.